are listening to Setting History Straight with Linda Watson on Hebrew Nation Radio.
So we're going to talk about the book of Malachi, and we're going to talk about that in terms of how we see it today in a modern viewpoint. It was written around 430, the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. And the word Malachi in Hebrew means a messenger of God, but it's written only to the Levites. And most people don't even realize that it's written only to the Levites. And we're going to see that because that's all it talks about in there is the Levites. It doesn't talk about anybody else. And it mentions Judah because it's the conservative people, but it really is talking to the Levites. Well, who is the Levites today? Well, we are the Levites, the people that are trying to teach the people in the world to go back to covenant, to go back and return back to God and become believers. Those people are the Levites. Now you've got the good Levites that are doing their job, and then you've got the Levites that are truly the ministers in the world today, and we're going to see that. But we're going to start with Matthew 12, verse 18, because nobody understands this verse, okay? It says, Matthew 12, verse 18, behold my servant whom I've chosen, my beloved, whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit in him, and he shall show judgments to the Gentiles. Well, that's talking about the Messiah, but it's talking about being chosen. And chosen means you have a job to do. That's what it means. And then it says, Matthew 22, verse 14, and we're real familiar with this verse, but nobody understands it. For many are called and few are chosen. That means all of these people out here that are believers, that they don't really follow the Old Testament laws. They don't keep their own thing. They're doing man-made holidays instead of the ones that are the biblical holidays. So these guys many of them have a relationship with God. They have enough knowledge to know that they have to go to God for their answers. And they are looking to God for their answers. And it's no doubt when you go into some of these churches, some of these people are very dedicated and they think you're just crazy with what you believe. And so my whole point is those people are the called. God's given them enough knowledge to be able to do what they need to do and live their lives, and they look to him for their help. And so you see these people, all the time. I know. I'm just going to ask y'all, so do y'all have friends that, that you actually see that they truly are believers, but they're not following the Old Testament laws. They're not. So do y'all have friends like that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Children too.
Family members too.
Yes.
And are they not looking to God for answers? They don't do it all the time, but they do look to God for answers.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of them are real true believers, and I mean they believe in what they believe, and they think they're spiritually right. They think what they've been taught is correct. They've been deceived, but what they taught is correct. This group of people are who the Father's called the called out ones. They're the called. They are the called. But few are chosen. So in other words, a lot of people read that and thought, well, we have a choice whether we are going to walk this walk or not. And it's only a few people that do it. That's how they read that verse. That's not what that verse says at all. It says that many are called and few are chosen. Many people think, well, that means, out of all those people that are being called, that they choose to follow God. No, that's not what it's saying at all, because he says he has to draw you, right? That's what it says in scripture. And the Messiah says, all the ones you have given me, I have kept them. And he said in other words, the Father chose The Father chose who would be in that group called the chosen. The chosen are the ones we just read about, and that a chosen person has a job. And so, because this is a thing that this verse has confused people for a long time, because they think it's their choice. But I can tell you, with Jonah, was it his choice? Did Jonah have a choice? Ask, all you got to do is answer that question. Did Jonah have a choice? Because I believe he died in that whale's belly. And so how does a person live in the belly of a whale? There's no oxygen there. So he had to have died, and then he was coughed up on the shore. And so 3 days later. And so he didn't have a choice. He had a job to do. The Father said, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it. So you have two choices. You're either going to do the job, or the next choice is you're going to do the job. So that's your two choices. So, this idea that we choose, and it just really bothers me that people think that we choose, because it's not us choosing. The Father chooses us to do a job, and he's going to make it so that we complete that job. Nobody teaches that. Nobody understands these verses, but all of these churches out here that are not really following the Torah laws and following the Old Testament laws, those are the people that are called, because Father hasn't given them the knowledge that they need to be able to go do their job. Do y'all see that? Now it says, except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved for the elect's sake, whom he has chosen. So the elect are the people he has chosen. It wasn't that they made the choice. Do y'all see that? They didn't make the choice. He made the choice, and he has shortened the days for the elect. And that's what he's saying. And there's no way around it, that he's the one that has chosen. The Messiah said the Father chose him. It's not like you decide on your own that you're such a righteous person that you make that choice. That is not. The Father says your righteousness is as dirty rags. So he doesn't have any use for your righteousness. He has use for the righteousness he gives you, right? He lives in you, so he gives you that righteousness. But when you are chosen, that means you have a job and you are the elect. Okay, and I think there's other verses on that, but we probably won't get into that. Now let's start with Malachi 1, verse 3. And it says, Ezekiel I hated and made his mountain a desolation and gave his heritage to the jackals in the wilderness. And whereas Edom said, we are beaten down, but we will return and build the wastelands. Thus said the Lord Jehovah, and they shall build, but I will throw them down, and men shall call them at the border of wickedness, and the people against whom Jehovah has had indignation for forever. Now, that is not a race of people. He's talking about people that fall into that role of Edom or Esau that are against God. And he has been against them forever. I don't think he's talking about a specific race here. I think he's talking about a mindset that people have. And he says, and they will return and build the waste places. Well, the waste places is the land in the Middle East. And many of those people, you can consider them Edom, because they do not believe in the Messiah. And the ones that are going to church and are going to temple over there, they're following Talmud and everything else that's not scriptural. And so, they can rebuild the waste places, which some of them have done, but they are some of the people that are Edomites from the standpoint that they are not following Torah and they're not following the Father. Do y'all understand that? Because he's talking higher level than just a race of people. And so, and he's saying they will rebuild the wastelands. That's, I think, is the old land of Israel. And so how does a place that has no water and it's just dry in a desert, how does that how do people figure that is the promised land? Because you know, it's not a place that where all the blessings are, and all the blessings have been in this country. Yes, we know that the scripture tells you that Jerusalem in the Middle East was a promised land, but what we don't realize is there's more than one of them. And it's not just talking about the Middle East. So the Bible really talks about two Jerusalems, and we know about the one in the Middle East. But there's another Jerusalem that's talked about in Zechariah 2 that really talks about the end time, because Zechariah, if you remember, that book was written after Judah had come back into the land after their captivity. So it couldn't have been written to the people at that time that had gone into captivity. It was not a book written for them. It was a book that's written for a later time. And chapter 2 of Zechariah talks about a different Jerusalem, a Jerusalem that had many people and many cattle and had no walls around their cities, which is not the Jerusalem in the Middle East. So there's two different Jerusalems talked about in scripture, and everybody misses that. And I believe that that place that's the second one, the one in Zechariah 2, is America. And so she is that place that has no walls around her cities. Jerusalem in the Middle East has a wall around the city. And we are that land. We are the land that got the double blessing. And we're the blessed nation in the earth. And it's really easy to see that. Really easy to see that. And people just can't make that transition. And the land in the Middle East will have a job at the end time. That's where the two witnesses will die in the streets in Jerusalem. They will have a job. They have a role. We want to look at this verse, Malachi 1 verse 5, and your eyes shall see and you shall say, God is magnified beyond the border of Israel. So God has magnified, and he has actually moved beyond the border of Israel. Do y'all understand what he's saying here? I have moved beyond the border of Israel. That is not just my land over there. That I have moved beyond that border over there. That I've spread this thing all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And I have people in all of these continents in the western part of the world that believe in the Messiah. And so that's what he said. I have magnified beyond the border of Israel. Don't just look at the land in the Middle East as the promised land. I mean, when we read this, we should be able to see this. Now, Jeremiah 33:21, then may you also my covenant be broken with David and my servant, that he should not be a son to reign over his throne. And the Levites and the priests are my ministers. So now we're starting here, and he's telling you who the Levites are. The Levites are my ministers. So the ministers or the preachers or the biblical, what do you want to call them, pastors, evangelists, that is who he's going to address in this book. He's going to be talking about the ministers in this world. He's going to address this in this book. Now, let's go on. It starts in verse 6 here. A son honors his father, and the servant his master. If then I am a father, where is my honor? That's what he's asking. So where's my honor? You know, you honor your father, you honor your master, but why don't you honor me? He's talking to the Levites here. And if I am your master, where is my fear? And they're going on, oh priest. See, that's the Levites. Oh priest, that despise my name, and you say, wherein have we despised thy name? In other words, the name is not he's not specifically zeroing in on a specific name. He's zeroing in on the respect that you have for him. Okay, and so that's what he's trying to say here. You know, where is my respect? Going on, verse 7, you offer polluted bread upon my altar. You're not teaching the truth. The people are eating food. Yes, they're eating the wrong stuff. It's polluted food. And you say, wherein have we polluted thee? And then do you say the table of Yahweh is contemptible? Now, going on, verse 8, and when you offer the blind for sacrifice, is that not evil? And when you offer the lame and sick, is that not evil? Present now upon thy governor, will you be pleased with thee? If, in other words, if you presented it to the governor, would he be pleased with the offering that you give to him? So they're talking physical here, because it says, don't go, you know, you were told not to put the lame on and offer those as sacrifices in a lot of cases. Will you accept thy people? All right, so he said, will you accept thy people? So going on, Jeremiah 31, verse 8, behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the uttermost of the earth, and with the blind and the lame and the woman and the child and her that is in travail with child, a great company shall return unto thee. So he's telling you who the lame is, who the blind are, and also the woman with the child, that's us, and the woman that's in travail, that's the people that go through the tribulation and are in all the pain. A great company shall return. That's what he's saying. He's talking about the gathering. After people have been brought into captivity, they're going to be regathered back to their lands. Now, going back into Zechariah 13, verse 8, and it's going to explain this. It came to pass, okay, that in all the land, said Jehovah, the 2 parts shall be cut off and die, and 1/3 part shall be left therein. And I will bring a 3rd part into the fire, and I will refine them as silver is refined. Look at the word silver there. That's associated with the Levites. And I will bring gold them as gold as tried, and they shall call me by my name, and I will hear them, and I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Yahweh is our God. So this is the group of people he's talking about here that are taken into captivity. They go through the fire, that's tribulation, and then they come back out, and he calls them his people, and they have now repented and returned back to him. The same story of the prodigal son. But now this is what's interesting, that he's labeling all these people as lame and blind. Okay, and that is Israel. She's talking to Israel here that she's lame and she's blind. And it says up here in verse 8 that, you know, you offer up your sacrifice on the blind and the lame. You're sacrificing Israel. These people don't know how to follow God. They are blind spiritually, and they're lame. They don't know how to walk it. All right, so verse 9, and now I pray thee, entreat the favor of God, that you may be gracious unto us, that by what means will he accept any of your persons? Oh, that thou may be one among you that shall shut the doors, and that shall not kindle the fire on my altar in vain. He said, could there not just be one of you that does what he's supposed to? He's talking to the priest here. Remember, he started out saying, I'm talking to the priest. He said, can't one of you do it? Can't one of you do things right? Neither will I accept an offering at your hand. So the stuff that you're doing, I'm not blessing it. I'm not accepting the sacrifices that you're making, because, you know, you're offering up stuff that's not what I want. And that's really what he's saying. But you have profaned. The table of Yahweh is polluted. The fruit thereof, even its food, is contemptible. So he said, what you have to offer the people is nothing short of garbage. So you have nothing to offer the people. You're not teaching them what they need to know. Going on. Behold, what is weariness is it that he has sniffed at it, and you have brought that which was taken by violence, and the lame and the sick, thus you bring an offering, you shall it be accepted at my hand. So he says, you're bringing the lame and the blind to the sacrifices, and do you think I'm going to accept that? In other words, do you think I'm going to take something that's polluted and I'm going to accept it? And so this is an example of, you can see that right now with Christmas, that everyone is worshiping God, but they're worshiping him in the wrong way. Do y'all see that with presents and materialism and everything else that goes with that? So here he's talking, verse chapter 2, he starts, "Oh, you priest." Do y'all see that he's talking to the Levites? He's talking to the churches, because he holds the churches in contempt, and he does not like the religions of this world. He doesn't like the religions. It's very plain that he's making it clear he doesn't like the religions of this world. He said, can only one of you do it right? Going on. Verse 2, and this is such an important verse. And if you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart to give glory unto my name, in other words, to my authority, you're not submitting to my authority. So will you take it to heart, is what he's saying. Will you take what I am teaching you to heart? And he said, if you won't do it, behold, I will rebuke your seed, spread out the dung upon your face. This is punishment. Even the dung on your feast days, you shall be taken away with it. And you shall know that I have sent this commandment unto you. So you're going to eventually figure this out, that my covenant may be with Levi. Levi was the tribe that represented the priest. They were the priest, and they were the ministers. So he said, I made a covenant with them, and they were supposed to be my pastors and my teachers. And so that's the covenant he's referencing here. My covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him that he might fear and fear me, and stood in awe of my name, my authority. See, my authority. And the law of truth was in his mouth, and unrighteousness was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and uprightness, and he turned away from the iniquity. So this was the true Levites that he worked with in the original covenant that they did follow, as he's saying. For the priest's lips shall keep knowledge, and they shall seek the law at his mouth, and he shall be the messenger of you, and he's going to be God's messenger. So he's going to use those guys also for prophets. Now going on, verse 8, but you are turned aside out of the way, and you have caused many to stumble in the law. So he's telling you, all of these people that are pastors right now, they're not teaching the law. He said, you cause people to stumble in the law. You have corrupted the covenant of the Levites, he says. Going on, verse 9. Therefore have I also made you contemptible and base before all the people, according to the way you've kept and have respect to purses of the law. Now, I'm going to stop here. Man, this is describing the churches today, that they do not want to, they tell you the Old Testament laws are done away with. And he's putting it right back on them and saying, you've offered the polluted offerings to me, and you are not keeping the law. So right here, he's telling you, and see, this book, like I said, was written way after captivity had gone. You know, these people had gone into captivity and came back. This was written during the time of Nehemiah and Ezra, when they came back into the land to reestablish it and rebuild the wall and Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. And so this is the time frame that's set here. So it's not talking about Israel before they fell. This has got to be for our time in the future. And so he's saying your pastors in this country are not doing their job. That's what he's saying. But we don't ever see this when we read these books in terms of what is going on around us. So verse 10, have you not all one Father? Have you not one God that created you? Why do you deal treacherously, every one against his brother, profaning my covenant? Now going on to verse 11, the covenant was the laws. That was Exodus 20, chapter 20, 21, 22, and 23. And this again, you cover the altar with tears and weeping and with sighing, in so much that you regard not the offering anymore, neither receive it with good will at your hand. So you do make supplication, you are crying, you are looking, but you are not following the laws and the covenants, is what he's saying. Yet you say, wherefore? Because Yahweh has been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth. Because the wife, now we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, because he said, you have not been a witness to the wife of your youth. In the beginning of this country, she was keeping God's law. She was the wife of his youth. Do y'all see that? And against whom you have dealt treacherously. You have nothing to, you call the people that were the pilgrims, the Puritans, you dismiss them as, today. They think they're safe, self-righteous, and sanctimonious. And that's what they refer to them as. And then they also refer to them as, these are the people that killed all the Indians. So I mean, you see what he's saying here. Yahweh has been a witness between thee and thy wife of their youth, because in the wife of the youth in the beginning of this country was the one that actually kept the covenant, and they made a covenant when they got here. Though she is thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. There you go. These people he's pointing to the fact that they kept it. Now, can this apply to other places? Scripture is written so it applies in many ways, but we're applying it to what we see going on in our land. So you ask why he no longer accepts them? Because he knows you have broken his promise to the wife you married when you were young. You have turned away from the beliefs and the walk that these people had in their youth, in the beginning of this country. She was your partner, and you have broken your promise to her, and that promise is the Constitution, although that you promised before God that you would be faithful to her. So you agreed to this Constitution, but now you're turning away from it, and the Constitution is the foundational document in this country that came right out of the Bible. So it was a covenant. It's the covenant that's talked about in Jeremiah 31, that's a covenant I'm going to make with the land, but it's not going to be like the covenant that I made with Israel when they were in Egypt and in the land of Canaan. He said, it's not that covenant. It's going to be a different covenant. Well, that's the Constitution that we have today, is that covenant. Because we agreed to keep God's laws and we wrote them into our Constitution. Did God make you one body and spirit with her? What was his purpose in this? Do y'all see this? I hope you're seeing this, that this is really coming down. He's really talking to our time. He is really talking to our time. It was that you should have children who are truly God's people, so that you make none to break the promise to his wife. Okay, so don't break the Constitution and the laws that the people were keeping in the beginning of this country. You need to honor what the Father taught you in the beginning of this country. It was from your youth that you need to look back to. And so verse 16, I hate divorce. I hate it when one of you does such a cruel thing to his wife. Make sure that you do not break the promise to be faithful to your wife. Now he's talking physically, right? But he's also talking about spiritually. Don't walk away from the the teachings and the values that were established in this country. Don't walk away from what these people who were the colonists established in this land, because they were the ones that established those first laws, and they were based on the Bible. Verse 17, you have wearied Yahweh with your words, yet you say, wherein have we worried them? In that you say, everyone that doeth evil is good in the sight of Yahweh. So it's okay if you're doing wrong or you're sinning. It's okay. And that's what they're saying. If you're sinning, it's okay to break those laws. And then going on, he delights in that. Where is the God of justice? So where is the God of justice here? That's what he's really very plain about what he's telling people, that you've turned away from the teachings of the beginning of this country, the establishment of the truth that was established in the beginning of this country. You've turned away from that now. And so now you're looking back and you're saying, God has, he forgives people. Well, yes, he does. And they have this ministry, though it's okay to sin. And so this is what's coming down. So chapter 3, and the Lord Almighty answered, I will send my messenger to prepare the way for you. So now he's beginning to talk about a messenger. And this book is written as a message. And he says that the Lord you are looking for will suddenly come to his temple. What temple is that? That's us. We're called the temple of God. He's going to come here for us. The message you long to see will come and proclaim my covenant. But you may abide in the days of his covenant. He's asking, who may abide in the day of his coming? See, this is talking about the end time. Right before he comes, who's going to be able to handle it? Who can actually abide and live during that time? Who shall stand when he appears? And who is like a refiner's fire and like a fuller's soap? And he shall sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi. There you go. That's us. We are those sons of Levi right now. We play the role of the ministers in this country, trying to turn people back to Yahweh. All right. And you purge them as gold and silver, that you may offer unto the Lord an offering of righteousness. See, that's the offering he wants, righteousness. And we're all fall short of it. We all do. So we're not just pointing our finger and he's trying to purify. He's saying here, the sons of Levi, who are these teachers? That's us. That's all of us. I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be swift witness against the sorcerers, against the adulterers, against the false swearers, against the those that oppress the hireling of the wages, the widows and the fatherless and the strangers, and fear not me, said the Lord. So he's gonna bring judgment. So all the things that are going to happen in the book of Revelations is the judgment. That is the judgment. People think, well, the judgment, when's the judgment coming? Later on, at some other time, the Father's going to, no, he's going to judge you in the next few years when all of this stuff comes down. That's going to be the real judgment. So, and then this next part has to do with, and I'm not going to really read too much of this, but it has to do with people not giving tithes and offerings. And so I'm just going to kind of skip down through that. Let's go to the next piece here. And they that fear the Lord shall spoke often one to another. So we need to be talking to one another during the week, during the, and reminding ourselves and becoming sharp swords. And, iron sharpens iron. And the Lord hearkened and heard it, and the book of remembrance was written before him for them that fear God, that has thought upon his name or upon his authority. So the name is it's not technically mean the name there. He's not interested in how you pronounce it. He's talking more specifically. Do you have that respect for me? Where is your respect for me to follow what I tell you to do? Going on, 17, for they shall be mine. We are his people. The people that are chosen, which are these Levites, they are his people. He considers them his. And in that day when I make up my jewels, that I will spare them as a man spares or his son that serves him. How wonderful a promise is that we're going to be spared. And he says, when the day when I make up my jewels, because we're going to be like a jewel to him. This is such beautiful language. It's just beautiful stuff. Then shall you return and discern between the righteous and the wicked. So you're going to have a job. You will discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serves God and him that serves him not. So there's going to be a dividing line for the people who don't do these things right and who don't do them right. Going on, Malachi chapter 4. And behold, the day comes, and that shall burn as an oven, because you had 3 sets of destruction. You had the water, which was during the time of Noah. Then you had the coming of the Holy Spirit, which came through first baptism and the laying on of hands. That was the second calling. And then this third calling comes at the end time, and it's associated with fire. It's a burning, and tribulation is associated with fire. And so that's why he's talking about burns as an oven. All the proud and all those that do wickedly shall be a stump. So if you're not going to follow, if you're going to have, like, as they say, 2 choices, you're going to do it his way or you're going to do it his way. That's your 2 choices. So if you're not going to follow him, you're going to be burned up. In other words, you're going to go through the judgment and during this tribulation time. And you're going to be destroyed. And that day shall come, shall burn them up, said the Lord of hosts, and it shall leave them neither root nor branch. Okay, so they're going to have another time, I believe, for salvation. That's after the 1,000-year period that they come up, and maybe to some of them different resurrections, but at least during that time. Now, verse 4, verse 2, and unto you that fear my name, that's my authority, shall the Son, S-U-N, of righteousness arise. So the Messiah is coming back as a bright light, if y'all remember. He's going to be like a shining sun that comes into this universe. And this is what he's referring to here. Son of righteousness arise with healing in his wings. He's going to, when he comes back, all the people that are in the grave that have been there waiting for this resurrection, they get healed and they get their new bodies. And that's what it's referencing here. And it can reference other things. And it says, and they shall go forth and grow as calves out of a stall. And verse 3, and you shall tread down the wicked, because the tribulation is going to be the judgment, and those people are going to be the ones that go through the judgment. This is what he's referencing. And they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in that day that I shall do this. Now, verse 4, this is what he's telling us. Remember you the law of Moses, my servant, which I commanded unto you in the Horeb, all of Israel, with the statutes and the judgments. He said, remember all the laws that I gave you. That's what he's telling the Levites, because this is written to the Levites. So he's telling them, remember my laws. Remember to keep them. Behold, I will send Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. That was the work that was started in the beginning of the 1900s, that where the people were in the worldwide church of God. They kept the holy days and the Sabbath and all the Old Testament laws they would eventually break down, and the church would dissolve itself, and it just spread, and it made all these different groups that keep the Sabbath, the holy days, keeping God's laws the best that they know how, and they're faithful to this covenant. And so that's the work he's talking about, that was already laid out before this end time, because it's been laid out so that we can teach these people when they actually repent after the punishment comes on. And so going on verse 6, and it's actually a person too, that shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children. That's us also. We're the ones that are trying to turn people back to the fathers, the original fathers, which was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, returning back to their laws that they taught, and which was the covenant. And he's telling you that that's what we're going to turn people back to. That's what we're doing. And the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So he said, you better be doing your job. And so this is how it ends. This is so easy to see that this thing really absolutely is talking to our time. It wasn't even written before the Israel went into captivity. It wasn't written before Judah came into captivity. The book was written way after Ezra and Nehemiah brought a group of people back into the land after 70 years after Judah had fallen. It may have not been 70 years exactly, but 70 years from the time Nebuchadnezzar started his conquest in the land of the Middle East. Okay, so when we look at this, we know that this thing applies to us. It is written to us. We need to put these books, and that's why I'm going through them. We need to put these books in the proper perspective and realize they're written to us. And this whole book was written to the Levites. It was written to the ministers in these churches worldwide, really, for them to look at their life and say, am I teaching the right things? Am I teaching God's law? Am I teaching the covenant? Because he's made it very plain that many of them are not. But his true Levites are the ones that are going to be doing the covenant and teaching the correct things and turning the hearts back to the original fathers who were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so that's what he's telling you. That's what this message is about. Nobody reads that and understands it, but every chapter is talking to the Levites. And he says they're going to be refined like silver and gold.
For more information about this broadcast, please visit our website at www.12tribehistory.com. That is the number 12, tribehistory.com, or email us at lwatson44@cox.net with any questions or comments.